Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. At dawn, Calvin Maddox found tire tracks slicing through his cornfield, and by nightfall, a full-blown gravel road with a locked gate stood where crops once grew. What began as trespass turned into arson, forgery, and a brutal war over land, lies, and justice. This was personal. I woke up before dawn the way I always do, when the fog is still hugging the ground and the world hasn't yet remembered it's supposed to be loud. It's my favorite time of day on the farm. The silence, the cold bite of the air, the smell of soil that's still asleep. I poured myself a mug of strong black coffee, stepped out onto the porch, and let the wood floor creak under my boots while I surveyed the fields. Everything looked the way it should. Orderly rows of freshly planted corn stretching across the northern field like a green army marching into the future, except something didn't sit right. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Then I saw it clearly, two deep, ugly tire tracks carving through my young corn in a crooked arc. I felt my stomach twist. I walked out there, the dew soaking through the cuffs of my jeans, and crouched beside the tracks. The soil was pressed down hard. Someone drove something heavy through here, and not just once. The tracks cut a clean path from the western tree line straight into the heart of the field, then veered off toward the fence. I knelt and touched the dirt. It was still moist from last night's rain, and the impressions were sharp. Whoever did this did it recently. I muttered a curse under my breath and stood up, scanning the horizon, but there was no one. No lights, no engine noise. Just birds waking up and my heartbeat thumping in my ears. I tried to convince myself it was some careless joyrider, maybe a kid on a four-wheeler cutting through the acreage after dark. It wouldn't be the first time someone treated other people's land like a free amusement park. Still, it bothered me, so after breakfast, I grabbed a couple of reflective stakes and marked the area, then set up one of my motion-activated trail cameras facing the field. I figured I'd catch whoever it was if they tried it again. That should have been the end of it. One more annoyance in the long list of annoyances that come with owning a farm. But 24 hours later, I realized I'd underestimated the level of stupidity I was dealing with. The next morning, I drove the pickup out to the field to check the cameras. I didn't even get out of the truck before I saw it. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. Then my brain caught up. Someone had laid a strip of bright gray gravel straight across my cornfield. Not a pile, not a tire rut. A road. A smooth, wide, professionally graded road that sliced through my rows like a fresh open wound. It ran from the edge of my property line, bordering the land owned by Jeremy Short, right through the middle of my field, and ended in a brand new iron gate installed at the far end. A mailbox stood beside it, shining in the morning light like a middle finger raised at me. I got out of my truck so fast I almost tripped. I walked the length of the gravel, kicking at it, cursing under my breath. This wasn't kids. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. Someone, no Jeremy, had taken it upon himself to build a driveway right through my land, as if it were a public easement, as if my father's blood and sweat that built this farm meant nothing. I yanked the gate open, but it was locked. Heavy chain, new padlock. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. My pulse hammered in my head. I pulled off my gloves and inspected the posts. They were driven deep into the ground, cemented. He'd even installed decorative lanterns on either side. The arrogance was almost awe-inspiring. I knew Jeremy enough to know exactly where I'd find him. At around 9 in the morning, he'd be on his deck with a cup of overpriced coffee, scrolling through his phone like a man too important to stand on solid ground. He fancied himself some kind of visionary, local realtor, wannabe developer, talker of big dreams and small ethics. So, I marched straight to his property line, through the makeshift driveway on my land, over the fence he never bothered to repair, and up to his fancy glass door. He turned when he heard me, eyebrows raised as if surprised I knew how to walk in a straight line. "Well, good morning, Cal," he drawled, wearing a smug smile and a robe that definitely cost more than it should. "You look upset. Coffee?" "Did you build a road through my field?" I asked, not bothering with niceties. He took a slow sip, stared at me with a look that landed somewhere between amusement and entitlement, and said, "Relax. I'm in the process of formalizing an easement. You don't really use that part of your land anyway, right? And this," he gestured dramatically toward the field, "actually increases your property value. Think of it as an upgrade." My hands curled into fists on instinct. "You don't touch my land without permission. Ever." He shrugged casually, the kind of nonchalant shrug that only comes from people who think the world owes them space. My lawyer says we're fine. Your dad and I had an understanding a while back, so just let the professionals handle it. You had no agreement with my father, I said through clenched teeth. He's been dead for 4 years, and even if he were alive, he'd never allow this. Jeremy blinked, feigned sympathy, then gave me that practiced realtor smile. Well, memories can be tricky, but anyway, it's already done, so we'll work out the paperwork. No need to get dramatic. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You have until tonight to remove every rock of that gravel, every post, every bit of that gate, or I remove it myself. He laughed, actually laughed. Calvin, buddy, you're not really in a position to negotiate. Trust me, just let this go. Something in me snapped then, but I didn't let it show. I just turned around and walked away, already planning my next move. The next morning, before the sun had a chance to dry the dew, I was already warming up the Kubota. The clatter of the diesel engine echoed off the hills as I hauled the first load of galvanized steel posts, bags of cement mix, a gas-powered auger, and a pair of 20-foot-wide farm gates onto the back of the trailer. It wasn't the first time I'd built a gate on this land, but it was the first time I'd built one fueled by pure rage. I didn't eat, didn't drink, just loaded tools like a man arming himself for battle. By 7:30, I was back out at the gravel scar that Jeremy called a driveway. I didn't hesitate. I drove the auger into the soil 6 feet in from the edge of my cornfield, my property 100%, and started boring holes for the posts, one every 10 feet, reinforced with rebar and filled with fast-set cement. While the slurry hardened, I welded heavy-duty hinges to the central posts and mounted the steel gate. When it was done, I wrapped a thick logging chain around the latch and locked it with a padlock rated to hold back a grizzly. Then, just for emphasis, I zip-tied a waterproof plastic sign that read, "Private property, no access, not a public road." Underneath that, trespassers will be prosecuted. I stood back and admired my work. The gate sat square across Jeremy's fresh gravel like a defiant middle finger. It didn't just block access, it made a statement. You don't put boots on another man's soil and expect him to smile about it. Not in Indiana. Not on land my father spent 30 years cultivating with his bare hands. Around 11, I was tightening the bolts on the final gate brace when I heard a horn. I turned to see Jeremy's shiny black Escalade idling just feet from the gate, his window already down. He was waving at me with one hand and holding his phone with the other. "You're really going through with this?" he shouted, incredulous. "What the hell is this supposed to prove?" I stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and walked toward the gate. "It proves I don't negotiate with people who lie and steal, Jeremy." "You're going to regret this," he said, the fake friendliness gone from his voice. "That gate is on the road I built. You're interfering with access. I'll have you in court by Friday." I leaned on the gate and looked him dead in the eye. "This gate is on my land. Your gravel isn't just trespassing, it's criminal damage. Call whoever you want. But you and your contractor better start digging that crap out before I do it for you. With a backhoe." Jeremy revved the engine, then slammed it into reverse and peeled back toward his lot, kicking up dust and tiny bits of gravel like a toddler, throwing a tantrum. I didn't smile. I just pulled my phone from my pocket and texted Sheriff's Deputy McClendon, who I'd gone to high school with. I figured I'd rather be ahead of the story than behind it. By the time the county patrol car rolled up, the afternoon heat was already pressing down hard. Deputy McClendon stepped out, adjusting his utility belt, and shook my hand with a slight smirk. "He's really trying this, huh?" "He built a goddamn road through my cornfield," I said. "Didn't ask. Didn't warn me. Now he's screaming about easements and threatening legal action." McClendon nodded. "Mind if I take a look?" I showed him everything. Original deed, digital parcel maps from the county GIS website, GPS markers from the survey I had done when my father passed, and drone footage from a few months ago that showed the untouched field, pre-gravel. He studied the maps, whistled low, and nodded again. "Well, he's in for a bad time," McClendon said. "That driveway's square on your land. No public easement, no right-of-way, no nothing." And from the look of the gravel spread, I'd say he hired someone to do it properly, which means he's got invoices, permits, maybe even insurance paperwork. All of which are going to look real interesting in a trespass case. "Can you get him to remove it?" I asked. "Not directly," he replied. "This is a civil issue, but if he keeps using it or tries to tear down your gate, Then we're in criminal trespass territory. You did the right thing locking it up. Just document everything." I nodded, though part of me wanted to do more than document. Part of me wanted to drag a scraper over the entire gravel path and dump it in his koi pond. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the Hogback Ridge, I poured myself a glass of bourbon and sat on the porch staring out at the gate. It looked good, like justice with a steel frame, but I knew the fight wasn't over. Jeremy was too arrogant, too connected, and too damn entitled to let this go. Men like him never stop when they're wrong. They double down. And I had the sinking feeling he'd already started. 3 days later, a certified envelope landed in my mailbox like a snake coiled in paper. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. Still, I brought it inside, laid it on the kitchen table like a corpse, and sliced it open with the same pocket knife I used to cut baling twine. Inside was exactly what I expected. A civil complaint filed in Monroe County Circuit Court with my name front and center. Plaintiff, Jeremy D. Short. Defendant, Calvin Maddox. Damages sought $75,000. I read it slowly, line by line, feeling the heat rise under my collar with every paragraph. Jeremy was claiming that I had intentionally blocked access to a mutually agreed upon private easement, causing him financial harm, loss of real estate value, and undue emotional distress. He also alleged that my installation of the gate caused damage to irrigation infrastructure and electrical supply lines that had supposedly been laid in anticipation of construction. My eyebrows nearly shot off my forehead. Irrigation, electrical supply lines. The only thing buried under that field was topsoil and fertilizer. There were no pipes, no wires, and absolutely no agreement. The last 2 pages contain the pièce de résistance, a scanned copy of a handwritten agreement dated roughly 6 years ago, allegedly signed by my late father, Walter Maddox, granting Jeremy Short the right to construct a private access road across the unused northern tract of our land. The signature was shaky. The date was before my father's stroke, but after his memory had started slipping. I knew damn well my father had never written this. I had been managing the farm with him during those final years. He could barely sign checks by that point, let alone enter into land deals with smug salesmen. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Jenna Price. She answered on the first ring. "Talk to me." "I just got a lawsuit dropped on my porch like a dead possum," I said. "He's claiming I damaged underground lines and blocked a pre-agreed easement. And, get this, he's submitted a handwritten document with my father's signature on it." Silence. "Fax me everything," Jenna said. "Right now. And don't touch anything out there. Don't move the gate. Don't dig up dirt. Don't give them an inch." Within the hour, she called back, voice tight and deliberate. "That signature, it's a copy-paste job. Someone scanned your dad's name from another document. The handwriting around it doesn't match. And that paper's dated wrong. The parcel description doesn't match the format used in that year's survey system. This whole thing reeks. Can we kill it?" "Not yet. We need proof. I want a licensed land surveyor on site this week. And I'm bringing in a forensic document analyst. If they fake this, I'll make them eat it in front of a judge." While Jenna went on offense, I went on recon. I drove out to the site again, walked the full length of the gravel path, photographing everything. I noted there were no irrigation lines, no junction boxes, no stakes, not even a power pole near the new gate. Just raw, disrespectful arrogance packed down with limestone. On the way back, I passed Jeremy's property and saw a crew unloading landscaping material he was getting ready to sell. He must have assumed that road would boost his property value, make it look like his estate had private gated access from the county highway. His plan was clear now: build first, sue later, and hope I'd be too slow or too poor to fight back. The next day, Jenna's forensic surveyor, a wiry man named Dale, arrived with a laptop, a laser rangefinder, and a quiet contempt for bullshit. He spent 5 hours cross-referencing historical plat maps, GPS overlays, and soil composition readings. By dusk, he had a full report. "This road was built between 72 and 96 hours ago," Dale said, not looking up from his screen. "No permits pulled, no soil surveys filed, no utility dig notices. Whoever did this didn't just overstep, they did it in secret. Can you prove it?" "Oh, I'll prove it," he said, snapping his laptop shut. "And I'll certify it in court. You'll want this." Jenna smiled when I handed her Dale's report. "We just got our first nail for his coffin." But Jeremy wasn't done digging. That night, I got a call from Jenna. County clerk says someone pulled an archival plat map showing your northern field as a pass-through corridor in a proposed 1983 development plan. Never happened, I said. I know, but they filed it in court today as supporting evidence. Problem is, the map has a seal, county seal, supposedly from '83, but I've never seen that version of the seal. And neither has my paralegal. You think it's a fake? I think we're dealing with a man who forges history like it's real estate brochures. We're going to the registrar's office in person. I hung up and stared out the window into the Indiana dusk. I'd fought weather, pests, broken equipment, and the IRS. But I'd never fought a man who thought your land is mine if I say it out loud enough times. Jeremy wasn't just trespassing anymore, he was rewriting reality. And if that was his game, I was about to flip the damn board. The fire started as a smell. That's how most farm disasters announce themselves, not with an explosion or a scream, but with a faint shift in the air. I woke up in the middle of the night, heart hammering before my brain caught up, the instinct that kept me alive in the service suddenly screaming that something was wrong. I sat up, sniffed the air, and caught it. Smoke, not wood stove smoke. Not fireplace smoke. Sharp, chemical, burned plastic mixed with dry straw. My blood ran cold. I threw on my boots and bolted out the front door. The night was black and still, but the sky above the old barn glowed a sickening orange. Flames licked through the sideboards, crackling like 1,000 snapping bones. My breath caught in my throat. I sprinted across the yard, shouting curses no one could hear over the roar. The heat hit me like an open oven. Sparks flew in my face. I grabbed the long handle of the barn door and yanked, but the metal was scorching hot. I backed away, shielding my eyes. I didn't think. I acted. I sprinted to the pump house, slapped the emergency valve, and cranked the old fire hose to full pressure. Water blasted out, hitting the flames with a hiss, steam billowing into the air. My pulse hammered with each sweep of the hose. I shouted for more pressure and prayed the old pump wouldn't give out. I could hear the siren of the volunteer fire crew finally wailing in the distance, but by the time they pulled up, the front half of the barn was already gone. 2 firefighters jumped out. Cody and Mike, both good men who'd known me since high school. They didn't waste time asking questions. One took over the hose while the other started spraying foam. The rest of the crew rolled in seconds later. We fought the blaze like soldiers in a losing battle, but we still saved what we could. The eastern wall held, though barely. By the time the fire died, the air reeked of charred hay, melted plastic, and defeat. Cody walked over, helmet tucked under his arm, face streaked with soot. "Cal, I'm sorry, man. We got here as fast as we could." "I know." I rasped, coughing. My throat burned. My eyes stung. "What the hell happened?" He glanced at the blackened ground. "Looks like someone used accelerant. There's a residue here. See?" He pointed at a dark, oily patch near the barn door. This wasn't a lightning strike or faulty wiring. Someone wanted this to burn fast. I stiffened. "You're telling me this was intentional?" Cody looked at me grimly. "We can't say that officially until the investigators run their tests. But yeah, it looks bad." The sheriff's deputies arrived next, their cruiser lights painting the barn ruins blue and red. Deputy McClendon stepped out, jaw clenched, eyes already scanning the perimeter. He took statements, snapped pictures, collected a half-melted plastic gas can from the debris. When he finally walked over to me, I was leaning against the fence, exhausted, arms shaking without my permission. "You okay?" he asked. "Define okay." He exhaled slowly. "We'll run prints on the can, check for any camera footage around the county road. I'll file this as suspected arson." I nodded, but there was a storm brewing inside me, a cold, controlled storm. "This wasn't random," I said. "You know it." "I know it." McClendon didn't argue. He just said, "Document everything. Don't do anything stupid." I didn't reply. My eyes were fixed on the smoldering wreck of the barn. The same barn where my father taught me how to mend fencing, where we stored seed, where I used to sleep in the loft as a kid listening to rain on the tin roof. Now it was a black skeleton. When the last of the lights faded and the fire crew rolled out, I walked the perimeter with a flashlight. I scanned the dirt, the fence line, the trees. That's when I remembered the trail cam I installed near the well, high up on a pole, angled to cover the northern side of the property. I nearly ran to the pump house, heart pounding. I pulled the SD card from the camera, slotted it into the reader in my truck, and replayed the footage. Most of the night was still and empty, until the timestamp hit 2:17 a.m. The screen lit up with headlights. bright, steady, unmistakable. A pickup truck eased along the tree line just out of view of the main house. It paused for a moment near the barn. The silhouette matched the body shape of a Ford F-Series, newer model, the same kind of truck Jeremy drove. I froze the frame, zoomed in. The resolution wasn't perfect, but I caught a moment where the headlights panned across the chrome grille. I knew that grille. I'd seen it up close when Jeremy parked his shiny toy in front of my gate 2 days ago. I felt a cold surge of fury, so sharp it almost made my vision go white. The next morning, exhausted but wired, I drove into Bloomington and marched straight into Jenna Price's office. She looked up from her desk, eyes widening when she saw my face. Jesus, Cal, what happened? Barn fire, last night. I dropped the flash drive onto her desk. This is footage from 217. That's his truck. She plugged it into her laptop and watched. Her expression hardened with each second of video. When it ended, she leaned back, arms crossed. "All right," she said, voice low and steely. "We're done playing defense. I'm filing a counterclaim today. Trespass, falsification, criminal mischief. And now, suspected arson. Jeremy is going to wish he'd never set foot on your land. You think we can prove it? We don't need to prove arson today. We just need enough to make the judge take us seriously. And believe me, this video, combined with that fake easement and the fraudulent map, it's enough to open every door we need." I nodded. My jaw ached from clenching so hard. "Do it." She stood, grabbed her briefcase, and said, "This is going to get ugly, Cal. Be ready for the next punch." I stared at the burned barn still etched in my mind. I am ready. What I didn't tell her, what I barely admitted to myself, was that part of me wanted Jeremy to throw that next punch, because I was damn sure I'd hit back harder. The first time I saw the county inspector's name on Jeremy's new court filing, I felt a chill. I'd been handed a fresh stack of documents from Jenna, and at the very top was a notarized affidavit signed by Ernest Blanche, Senior Land Use Compliance Officer for Monroe County. It read like a script written by Jeremy himself, full of phrases like customary access, implied servitude, and historic precedent for ingress. I read it twice, then a third time. It wasn't just bad policy, it was a blatant lie. According to Blanche's statement, Jeremy had been using the access route across my field for over 2 years with no objections. He also claimed that my late father, dead 4 years now, had verbally agreed to the driveway in question. I stood there in the middle of my kitchen, fingers clenched on the countertop, trying to breathe. My father never agreed to that. That path didn't even exist until 6 weeks ago. I drove straight to the county office, walked past the front desk like I owned the place, and asked to speak with Blanche. The woman at the counter blinked and told me he wasn't available. I could make an appointment. "No need," I said. "I'll wait." She didn't argue. 15 minutes later, Ernest Blanche emerged from a side hallway, adjusting his tie and holding a coffee he clearly didn't want to spill. He froze when he saw me. His smile was thin and professionally fake. "Mr. Maddox," he said, "this isn't usually how—" "You lied," I interrupted. "On record, under oath. You submitted a false affidavit backing a forged easement." He held up both hands like I was brandishing a weapon. "Easy now. There's no need for threats. This was a routine interpretation of historical use. That access road didn't exist until last month, and I've got satellite imagery to prove it. My father's property boundaries are recorded, surveyed, and filed. You signed off on a statement about a verbal agreement with a dead man, and you did it under penalty of perjury." Blanche's confidence wilted just slightly. He glanced around, leaned in, and said, "Look, maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Jeremy misrepresented some of the facts. But that's not on me. I'm not the bad guy here. You took a $12,000 consulting payment from his Shell LLC 2 weeks before signing that affidavit." He went pale. Jenna had pulled the financials that morning. Turns out Jeremy was funneling money through a holding company listed as Fieldstone Ventures, and that company had wired a consultation fee to Blanche for property development review. No project name, no invoice, just a clean round number. She had bank records. Blanche stared at me, silent. I leaned forward. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to give you a chance to explain this to the district attorney before I do." He sputtered something about needing to talk to his lawyer. I left him standing there and texted Jenna. Within 20 minutes, she had drafted a formal ethics complaint and forwarded the financial evidence to the county prosecutor's office. That night, I met her at her office, where she was printing a motion to formally challenge the validity of the submitted servitude. She handed me a copy with a tired but triumphant smile. "We're flipping the whole damn table," she said. "You think it'll hold?" "Oh, it'll do more than hold. If the judge sees even half of this, Jeremy's screwed." I sat down, staring at the motion. It laid out everything: the false affidavit, the forged map, the video footage, and the financial trail. And now we had a potential government co-conspirator. "I think Jeremy is going to panic," I muttered. "Let him. We've got enough to bring the heat now, civil and criminal." I got home late. The farm was quiet, too quiet. My dog Dusty followed me around the house like he sensed something wrong. I checked every lock, every camera. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, a reporter called. Her name was Karen Fielding from the Hoosier Dispatch, a regional independent paper known for covering land disputes and shady developments. She'd gotten wind of the court filings and wanted to talk. Said someone from the county had tipped her off. I almost hung up, but something in her voice made me pause. Professional, but not invasive. Curious, but not nosy. "I've been covering this county for 15 years, she said. "And Jeremy Short's name keeps showing up whenever a property dispute smells rotten." I agreed to meet her at the gate the next morning. When she arrived in a battered Subaru with a camera bag over one shoulder, I half expected another amateur. But she was sharp, well prepared, and asked the right questions. She filmed as I walked her through the burnt remains of the barn, showed her the footage, the fake easement, the survey maps, and the court documents. She never interrupted, just listened, scribbled notes, and occasionally asked a precise question. "I'm going to run this story," she said when we were done. "Not just because it's important, but because it's happening all over this state. And people like Jeremy count on silence." "Then be loud," I told her. "I'm done staying quiet." When she left, I stood by the gate watching the gravel road stretch toward the horizon. The same road he tried to claim. The same path I'd fought to protect. And deep down, I knew Jeremy wasn't done yet. It was 2 nights later when the dog started barking. Dusty bolted upright at the foot of my bed around 2 in the morning, his growl low and unfamiliar. I sat up, heart already pounding, and listened. There it was, a sharp metallic clang, then a muffled thud. Somewhere outside, somewhere too close. I grabbed the old Winchester from the gun locker, slid into boots, and stepped onto the porch. The farm was cloaked in darkness, save for the faint glow from the barn area. That glow wasn't natural, it flickered. I broke into a run. By the time I reached the barn, the flames had already taken hold of the old straw loft. My backup generator had kicked on the floodlight near the shed, and in that weak cone of yellow, I saw the source. An overturned gas can still dripping onto the ground, and beside it, scorched earth leading to a set of tire tracks in the dirt. Fresh ones. The old oak near the fence line gave me just enough elevation. I spotted it, Jeremy's silver Ram pickup, taillights blinking as it peeled away down the gravel road toward the highway. I didn't chase. Instead, I dragged the hose from the well station, yelling for Dusty to stay back, and started hosing down the edges, hoping to slow the spread until the volunteers arrived. My neighbor from 2 miles down, Dale Harper, showed up in a minute flat with a pump truck and helped me contain it. But half the barn was already gone. The sheriff's deputy who took the report wasn't the same one who'd responded during the driveway dispute. This guy, Deputy Flores, was younger but sharp. I showed him the melted can, the scorched tire marks, and most importantly, the footage. Because 2 weeks earlier, I'd installed a trail camera above the well house. It caught infrared at night, had motion activation, and snapped a beautiful grainy image of Jeremy's truck, license plate and all, creeping toward the barn at 2:17 a.m. Deputy Flores watched the footage twice and let out a low whistle. "You got yourself a pretty strong case, Mr. Maddox," he said, scribbling notes. "But arson's hard to prove unless we can tie him directly to the act. Truck ain't enough unless we can put him behind the wheel." "What about the gas can?" I held up the scorched metal cylinder, now bagged. "We'll test it," he said. "But let me be honest, small-town politics. You know how it is." "I'm done playing politics," I told him. "I want this bastard in court." He nodded. "Then document everything. Every nail, every board lost. We'll log it all." The next morning, I drove straight to Jenna's office. She looked exhausted, but when she saw the footage, something in her clicked. "That's the final straw," she said. "We file the counterclaim tomorrow. Arson, criminal trespass, falsifying public records, and intentional destruction of property." She drafted the suit like a scalpel, precise, methodical, lethal. Jeremy was about to face not just a civil counterattack, but potential felony charges. By the end of the week, we had everything filed, and then the news hit. Karen Fielding's article dropped online Saturday morning, front page of the Hoosier Dispatch with a bold title, Land Theft, Lies, and Fire, The Maddox Farm War. It spread fast. Local Facebook groups, regional news feeds, even a few YouTube breakdowns from property law bloggers. Karen didn't hold back. She quoted everything. The forged easement, the driveway intrusion, the bribed inspector, the fire. She even included a short video clip from my interview, me standing at the burned-out barn holding a twisted piece of iron like a war relic. And people listened. They commented, emailed, offered help. Former landowners, fellow farmers, even a couple state reps who'd fought similar disputes. The pressure mounted, and Jeremy. He panicked. On Monday, his office in downtown Bedford was shuttered. By Tuesday, Fieldstone Ventures' website went offline. And by Wednesday, the county prosecutor called Jenna. "We're moving forward with a criminal investigation," she said. "Too many coincidences. Too much smoke." By Thursday, the sheriff's office, escorted by 2 DA agents, served a search warrant on Jeremy's office. They walked out with hard drives, file boxes, and a very angry man in a blue suit shouting about entrapment and overreach. I watched from across the street. Dusty sat beside me in the truck, tail thumping. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Momentum. The fallout came fast. With the barn still smoldering in parts and Karen's article going viral, it wasn't long before county officials started scrambling. The sheriff's office began digging through years of Jeremy's land transactions, and things got messy real quick. Jenna called me into her office. She had a manila folder already open. The bribed inspector? Turns out he's on a few property deeds too. Jeremy was using his connections to push through permits and fake easements all over the county. Not just you. I leaned in. "So we're not the only victims." She nodded. "But you're the one with proof. Fire, forgery, fraud, all backed by surveillance. You've got the cleanest case. That means you're the one they'll rally around." That week, they raided Jeremy's house and storage unit. Reports said they found multiple altered maps, signed blank notary forms, and a burner phone full of texts coordinating these backdoor land grabs. Karen even got a leaked tip that he'd been trying to pressure an elderly landowner into selling under threat of eminent domain. Only problem, he wasn't the government. The DA called a press conference. Official charges, document forgery, filing false records, bribery of a public official, criminal trespass, attempted arson, and conspiracy to commit fraud. I watched the whole thing on my porch with Dusty beside me and a beer in hand. I couldn't help but smirk when they said bail was denied, but Jeremy wasn't going down without swinging. 2 days later, Jenna received an emergency motion from Jeremy's new defense team. They claimed I had interfered with an existing access agreement, had provoked violence, and, get this, manipulated public perception with intent to cause reputational harm. Basically, I was being sued for defending my own land too loudly. I expected Jenna to flip the table. Instead, she laughed. "This is desperation," she said. "We'll bury them with it." Still, it meant more legal fees, more court appearances, and more cameras showing up at the farm. One local outlet aired a segment showing the burned barn, my new gate, and a brief drone shot of the illegal driveway that had started it all. Then came something unexpected: support. Local farmers showed up with wood, helped rebuild the shed. A church group donated fencing supplies. Karen came by with a printed copy of her article and said, "You're not just a client anymore, you're the line in the sand." And maybe I was, because Jeremy's empire, it was crumbling fast, and I was still standing. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, residents, local officials, all of them crammed into the old county building that suddenly felt too small for the weight of what was about to happen. Jeremy sat at the defendant's table in a tailored suit that didn't quite fit the occasion anymore. His smirk was gone. His lawyer looked like he hadn't slept in days. I took the stand with a calm I hadn't known I still had. Jenna had prepped me like a soldier before a mission. Stick to the facts. Don't take the bait. Don't editorialize. Just the truth, steady and solid. I described the tire tracks, the gravel laid without permission, the surprise gates and mailbox. I showed the deeds, the maps, the drone footage. Then came the footage from the camera by the well, the unmistakable shine of Jeremy's headlights, the silhouette stepping toward the barn, the flash of ignition. Jeremy's attorney tried to argue the video was inconclusive, but when the DA followed with GPS data from Jeremy's own truck, pinged near the barn at 2:17 a.m., the courtroom shifted. You could feel it. The oxygen changed. Then came the inspector. He folded almost instantly under pressure, especially after being shown the financial transfers from Jeremy's LLC through a shell company. The judge raised an eyebrow so high I thought it might stay that way permanently. The inspector admitted to processing certain applications outside standard procedure and accepting consultation fees without disclosure. The courtroom murmured. The judge ordered silence. After 5 days of testimony, deliberation took 4 hours. Jeremy was found guilty on all major counts: forgery, criminal trespass, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted arson, and bribery of a public official. He was sentenced to 14 years. The inspector got 8. The courtroom didn't cheer, it just exhaled. Then came the civil ruling. The judge awarded me $730,000 in compensatory and punitive damages, restoration of property, legal costs, the whole 9 yards. Outside the courthouse, I gave a statement to the press. This wasn't about revenge, I said. It was about the line between what's yours and what's not, and what happens when someone thinks they're too important for permission. A year later, that line is still where I left it. The illegal driveway is gone, replaced by fresh corn rows. The barn's rebuilt, bigger and better. The nursery Karen suggested is thriving. She even wrote a second article titled Roots of Justice, all about how small landowners push back against big egos. She moved in last spring. Last week, I took her out behind the new greenhouse to the spot where Jeremy's fake gates once stood. I dropped to one knee with a ring I'd been carrying too long. She said yes. So, now there's a sign at the edge of the field. Private property, no trespassing, no exceptions. And below that, in smaller print, especially realtors named Jeremy.